I am an anthropologist. I study the way that human behavior forms. Specifically, I'm interested in human connection and meaningful conversations. Found myself here starting as a photographer, watching people relate back and forth. Superfeel is a social network that we're building now, and it's a social network that's going to be authentic, healthy human connection. It's going to support mental wellness. It's going to completely revolutionize the entire way that social media has been built, because it's being built for the opposite reason. Superfeel is a method that I developed that helps photographers and videographers create what I would call a social environment where the person that they're photographing feels safe and free to be themselves. As you probably know, being somebody who shoots people a lot, many times when people become aware that they're in front of the camera, they do this weird face like that. And I noticed that when I was a photographer starting out, and it really bothered me because people never look their most beautiful when they do that. So I spent years trying to figure out why people do that, and I found out a lot about that, and I put it all into a really simple, beautiful method that anybody can learn that allows them to draw out that authentic, real emotion from people. A lot of times people think that photography or being a photographer is about taking pictures, but the truth is that the camera does all of that part for you. So what the photographer's job really is to interact with the subject in a way that makes them feel safe enough to express authentically. Also, their job is to frame everything and make sure there's good lighting and that kind of stuff, but all that's a lot more obvious, and the part that I think has been missed a lot in photography in general is the importance of the role of the photographer. There's the importance of the role of the photographer in how the final picture turns out in terms of how genuine the person's expression is. There's a saying, every portrait is a self-portrait, which I think is really interesting, and it's speaking to that same thing, to how important, how big of an effect I would say that the photographer has on the person they're shooting. As important as the words are that we say to each other, there is this body language that's happening constantly that some scientists suggest are as much as 85% of the actual communication that's happening. And in that 85% of what your body is saying to the person across from you, there's a lot of really, really old, important signals being sent and received. And nowadays, when people have learned to be very polite, they can say the right thing and they can do the right thing and they can smile and they can nod, but often that's actually just a cover for a deep level of discomfort and fear, which will always show up in the picture. Because even when we learn to say the right things, we can't hide how our body's really feeling about things, at least not very well. So I really saw the job of the photographer as the one to set the tone for how the whole interaction was going to go. And I created a language for it. It really boils down in the most simple form to what we call Superfeel prompts. And these are little things that you say or ask the person you're photographing to do that helps them on a neurological level to shift from one part of their brain that's concerned about what's happening to another part of their brain that feels and dreams and experiences and falls in love, and the whole human bonding system. It's just a different part of our brain. And it's typically not the one that we start out with when we're interacting with somebody that's like a stranger to us. So Superfeel basically gives the photographer the ability to help the person that they're photographing access this part of themselves that they don't know how to do by themselves, that allows them to be expressive and free. And kind of a side effect of that I didn't expect, but was, I think, the best part, is when you're in that part of your brain, that's where all the beautiful feelings come from. So when a photographer is using this method to shoot somebody, often they will get feedback afterwards saying, that was one of the most incredible days of our life, or we fell in love again, or I haven't felt like that in years. And getting a lot of feedback like that is what really spurred me on to explore everything that I ended up learning about how human emotion is created and why it happens when it does and all that. So in short, the Superfeel method and our prompts help photographers create a really beautiful, safe experience for the person being photographed that makes it easier for them to show the part of them that those around them fell in love with. And as a result, the pictures don't only look better, they're more valuable, because what we really want from a picture when we see somebody, when we have somebody photographed, is we want to see the part of them that we recognize as, oh yeah, that's my person. And that's what Superfeel does. I actually believe that what we call politeness is a social technology, and when you look at the long span that humans have been creatures on Earth, for millions and millions of years, it's a very, very new technology. So as much as 10,000 years ago, it may not have existed at all, at least not in any form that we know. And what's really important to remember about human interaction is that our bodies were built and evolved for this experience we had over millions and millions of years, not sudden changes that we make in culture. These days with technology, cultural shifts can happen very, very fast, and often our bodies, our genetic makeup, our cells don't have time to really learn how to respond to that. So humans are in this really interesting place because a part of us knows how to respond to everything that we've built, the newest part of us, and then the oldest part of us is still playing the old game. So the piece about politeness has been of a special interest to me because we grew up in a time, our bodies grew up in a time where we really only knew 30 to 50 people in our entire life. We were in tribes of that, and we would travel all around through jungles and forests with these same 30 people. So if there was 30 people in the entire world and that's all that you knew, something like politeness is completely useless. Politeness developed as these tribes started meeting each other, and they had to find a way not to kill each other. And that's kind of where politeness came from. But it's important to understand that that politeness, that social technology, which was amazing because we didn't kill each other, is actually just a cover-up for this instinctive fear that we have when we meet somebody from another tribe. Because a long time ago, if you met someone from another tribe, it was unlikely they were going to be like, hey, let's be friends. And much more likely they would try to kill you for whatever it was that you had, So, and I'm making some of these, guesses, because that's all that they can be, based on what happens between tribes of other primates when they meet. So we know a little bit about, how that might have happened based on that. All that to say, when you would meet somebody that you were not familiar with, one of the first instincts would be to hold up a spear, because you didn't know. Maybe they were nice, maybe not, but you needed to be on the ready. So politeness now looks like, hi, my name is Jesh. But internally, biologically, what's happening is the exact same parts of your body trigger when your ancestors used to hold up the spear. And we're looking at things like cortisol flooding the body, looking at things like adrenaline in the body, and these are hormones that make us ready to fight, flight, or freeze. That's what they're for. So what's fascinating to me about politeness in general and this cover-up that we do is, even though it's so accepted because it's so normal now, what we're really doing is triggering each other to be in this very fear-centered place, this very survival-centered place. And when that part of the body is triggered very strongly, you can't access the higher brain functions, such as human connection, such as kindness, such as creative problem solving. Basically everything that's beautiful about humans goes completely away while we're being polite. And that's kind of a thing that you wouldn't really think about when you think about polite, that it could do all that, but it does. And we've all been in those kind of conversations before where you walk away from the conversation and you did not receive anything. It was almost like a waste of your entire time. We're like, oh my God, I'm so glad that's finished. The reason why that happens is because someone is in that polite place the entire time. So even though they're saying words, their body is basically going like this. And while you're going like this and the person across from you is going like this, the human bonding apparatus doesn't work at all. And the conversations we walk away with, where we're like, oh my God, that was incredible, I'm different after that conversation, that's because a different part of our brain, a newer part, is active that allows us to create these incredible circuits of information exchange where you and I can talk for 30 minutes and I can be different after that talk because you told me things I've never experienced, and you can be different because I shared things with you you had never experienced. That's the real beauty of humans, is that when they meet like that and they are open in that way, they can share in a way that I can give you everything I know and I don't lose it, and now you have it. In the same way that, like in a conversation of talking, you can walk away from it feeling changed or different based on how open the person is, that applies also inside of pictures, because the original language is body language. So a lot of times in most photographs that you see, people are being polite, which is to say they're doing the thing that they think they're supposed to be doing, like this. And while I'm doing that, I'm not actually showing you anything of myself. It's just a form that I've memorized. So what you see happen in the best of pictures is people completely forget that they're being photographed in the first place, and they're just honest with their expressions. And when a photograph or a video captures somebody who's being honest in their expressions, the body signals of honest, open expressions come through the image and are caught in that representation of the photograph or the video. So somebody else seeing that photo or video later, their body responds in a similar way because we mirror each other. So when we see someone who's open and free inside of an image, it helps us as the viewer to also be open and free and learn how to connect with that person. Something that really surprised me is that when I first started photographing couples, I was trying to figure out how to get the wall down between me and them, because as soon as you take a camera to somebody, you feel it. You know, a lot of times people just get weird. And I learned how to lower that wall through some of these things I've been talking about. What I didn't expect is that the same kind of social environment that lowers the wall between me and them also lowers the wall that people build up between each other. And the simplest way I could probably say that is, when you're first falling in love with somebody, there's a lot of exploration that happens. You take them to new places you've never been, you ask them things you've never asked them. A simple illustration of that is often during dates and the romantic period in the beginning, people tell each other their stories. And the first time you hear the story of the other person, you're like, wow, Martha, that was incredible. And then you hear Martha tell it again at dinner a week later, and then 3 weeks later, and then 2 years later you hear her tell the same story to other people, and you're like, oh my God, this story again. I've heard this story so many times. So this first time that we hear something, the novelty of interaction that hasn't happened before is a big part of what we call human connection. And what tends to happen, because we're creatures of habit, is that we will initiate connections between people from the explorative, curious place of our mind. But then we will quickly start to categorize them and decide what they are and define them. And the more that relationships get filled up with that kind of labeling and categorization, the less novel, explorative interactions happen. And it's that novelty and that exploration that sparks those feelings of excitement in us. Probably similar to how you didn't get super excited the last time you brushed your teeth. It's just kind of like, I know how to do this, I've nailed it. But the first time you ever were allowed to brush your teeth all by yourself, it was probably the hugest deal. You're just like, feeling like the biggest boy ever or whatever. It's the same thing, that falling in love experience of being with somebody that you love in the beginning. It's exciting. And then the longer you're with somebody, if you just keep saying the same things and doing the same things, that excitement just fades. So what I started doing in the shoots was asking them to interact in ways that they never had before. And the thing that shocked me is that the moment that they felt safe to do that, and they did start interacting in ways they never did before, the exact same feelings that they had in the beginning started sparking again. People think that those feelings have to do with the beginning of the relationship, and then they fade, but that's not true. What's really true is that those feelings are generated by explorative, novel interaction. And at any point during the relationship, if explorative, novel interaction starts happening again, the body will respond in the exact same way. So in a certain way of looking at it, Superfeel is this collection of ways that photographers can use to ask the couples and the people that they're shooting with to play and to connect and to explore, interacting in ways that they don't usually do. The moment that happens, you see the body come alive in a very different way. And the two people across from each other who just moments ago were weird and awkward, when these forms of interaction get introduced, you see their eyes light up, you see them get closer, the body language changes, and because humans mirror each other, something really extraordinary happens, which is called emotional escalation. Most people are more familiar with emotional escalation in the terms of an argument, where you go like, blah, 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 and the other person goes, blah, 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 blah. Mm-hmm. Then you go, blah, 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 blah. That's emotional escalation in that way. In Superfeel, joyful emotional escalation happens. Loving emotional escalation happens, where someone risks a little bit of themselves. The other sees that and responds, and they go deeper. The other sees that and responds and goes deeper. So I have seen wild things happen in spaces of 5-10 minutes, being somebody who's practiced this technique for so long, watching two humans who begin normal and closed, kind of distant, just unfolding like a flower blooming, this incredible essence of them that I would call like the voice coming out, and the voice meeting the voice, the person meeting the person. Literally, so many people tell me things like, we fell in love again after this shoot, like crazy. Superfeel is a tool that helps photographers draw out genuine emotion from the people they photograph.